In this video, I'm going to be evaluating US Bank. This is a stock that I have in my portfolio. It's a stock that I started to buy in 2023 when banks were really sold off mid-year. It's done well for me and it pays a really nice dividend. They announced their earnings and I wanted to go through those earnings and see if it was good news or bad news and share that with you. Also share what I think the company's stock is worth and what I'm going to do with this stock. If I'm going to buy more shares, hold my shares, or sell my shares in US Bank. Overall, banks have been doing well since the whole scare last year that was driven by Silicon Valley Bank. They really bounced back and have been performing quite well from both an appreciation standpoint as well as the dividends they pay. The US Bank earnings came out and they were not met favorably by investors. There was a sell off on the stock. I'm going to go through and see what bad news is out there, what investors didn't like. Then I'll really assess the company and make my own opinion on what I think I ought to do for my portfolio. As I always do, everything that I share is just my opinion on US Bank as it relates to my portfolio. I don't recommend you buy US Bank, and I never recommend any investment, nor do I ever provide any financial advice. I'm just sharing my investor journey as I grow my portfolio individually. With regard to the brand equity and the overall value of the business, the bank is doing well. This is a mid-sized bank that's been growing through acquisition and organically growing. That's really good. I think a mid-sized bank, they stand a chance of growing far more than a real big bank. Let's say a Citibank, JP Morgan, or Bank of America. Those banks, the big major banks, are so big, just for them to grow 2-3% is a monumental feat. Where US Bank is much smaller and they can really grow at higher rates, which I'll show later on. I like that about this bank, that they're a particular size that enables them to grow, but they're big enough. They're also diversified in other financial services. I like that about them as well. US Bank is a $61 billion market cap bank, so it's a mid-sized bank, and they have revenue of $25 billion. So you're paying a little over 2 times revenue for this bank. Their net income is really good at $5 billion, and their earnings per share looks really good at 3.27 for the trailing 12 months, and their forward PE is 10.08, which is a low PE. I'm going to use a 12 since they are a growing bank, they're profitable. Multiple analysts cover this bank and they have a buy rating with a price target 19% above the current stock price. Over the last year, it's gone up 11% plus the dividend. So when you add the dividend, you're up about 16% on this stock. That's a pretty good return for 1 year. Looking at the news that's come out today since the earnings came out, investors did not like the net charge offs for the bank. That usually spells, bad loans and costs and expense. And interest income did dip. I'm going to get further into that. But at the end of the day, a bank really makes their money on net interest margin. And in the case of US Bank, for the first quarter of 2024, that dipped. So their earnings were not really well liked by investors, and I frankly didn't like them either. So first, overall, a measure of a bank is net interest margin and net interest income itself. And their net interest income went down. So that's strike number one. Their overall revenue went down. Didn't like that either. And their net income went down. So just a really bad report for the first quarter. Not terrible, but bad. And overall, the earnings per share dipped. So it was a bad quarter. It's going to be important for them to have better quarters in 2024, or this stock is going to suffer this year. As mentioned, I like this bank because they're growing. And if you look at their growth in 2023, that was really impressive, 15.9%. Really nice growth. If they can continue to grow well, this bank is really going to be valued far more. Their earnings per share is also really healthy. And it also is growing their earnings per share. So 2 really good things going on. And it's expected their earnings going into the future all the way to 26. The growth rate in earnings per share is going to be there. So I really like that about US Bank, that they're very profitable. They pay a high dividend to keep growing. An important measure for a bank is to grow its book value. And that is a bit of good news with US Bank for this quarter. They did grow their book value in the quarter. So that's very good. Even though the income statement kind of struck out, their book value is growing. So that's a bit of good news. I created a valuation for US Bank, and I did a couple methods that apply to banks. One of them is valuing the company based on book value, and the other is on price earnings value. And I ended up coming up with a 34% discount based on the book value and the earnings and earnings per share that US Bank is projected to produce. That's a nice discount overall, and they pay a nice dividend of over 4%. So here's my scorecard for a bank, and I'd like to scorecard US Bank and make a decision whether I'm going to buy more shares, just hold my shares, or sell my shares in this bank. First, do I want to own this particular bank? Do I like the banking industry? The answer is yes. As mentioned, I like the size of the bank. I think they're doing a lot of good things. Their brand is very well liked by consumers, and they're acquiring other smaller banks. I like that. The Bank I cannot say is operated really well at the current time, and the reason for it is, the first quarter was a miss on the income statement. So I got to give them a failing grade on that item. They are growing their book value, which is good, and they offer a really nice discount. So those things are good, but I have to hold my shares. I'm hoping that they can right the ship and have a good Q2, a good Q3. That'll launch the stock into rally mode, and it'll continue to rise in value. But for now, I'm just going to hold my shares in US Bank. US Bank didn't have a good quarter, and I'm glad that I have my portfolio well diversified across many companies. Today, I own United Airlines, and it had a great day. It was up 18%. So it covered the loss on US Bank stock for sure. But that's the power of diversification is when one stock goes bad, a couple of other stocks will cover for that loss. But I'm hoping that US Bank really rights the ship and they have a better Q2 and a better Q3 going forward. I hope you liked the video that I produced for US Bank, found it interesting, and I really appreciate you watching.